Hello and welcome to Face to Face. Our guest today is Kevin Neish. Kevin is a Victorian who came to fame, one might say, in May of last year because he happened to be aboard a ship called the Mavi Marmara. And Kevin, I may be saying that wrong. That was one ship of a flotilla sailing towards Gaza and trying to break the Israeli blockade of Gaza. And I'm sure that many of you remember what happened. The ship was attacked by Israeli commandos. Several people were killed. Everyone was, arrested. And that was basically the end of the story for that ship, although a lot of good things amidst the tragedy have come from that event. So Kevin, let me ask you first of all how it is that you happened to be aboard the Mavi Marmara sailing towards Gaza in May of last year.
Well, I volunteered with a group called Free Gaza. They've been trying to send ships to Gaza with aid since 2008. And I've given money, many times, and this time I volunteered to go in person as a volunteer. And so I actually sailed in a different ship. I sailed on a ship called a Challenger 2 for Free Gaza. That ship broke down on the way to Gaza. Some say the Israelis say they sabotaged it, but I don't have any proof. But because it broke down, we transferred over to the Turkish ship, the Mavi Marmara, and that was off of Cyprus. We transferred at sea, and then I was on the Mavi Marmara, and then 2 days later, the assault happened, and I stepped into a world event without expecting to.
Yeah, and now I spoke to you probably a month or so before you left, and just quite by accident, and I don't think any of us felt that what eventually happened was in the cards at all.
Oh, no, nobody expected the violence. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. I didn't expect the violence, but the people on board the ship, many of them were prepared. They, when the Israelis initially showed up around us with their large cruisers and helicopters and submarines, I didn't see them, but they were there. Everybody on board got life jackets on. I thought it was foolish myself. I thought that the Israelis aren't going to attack us. It's early in the morning. It's dark. We're many miles offshore. We're not even off Gaza. We're still off of Israel, but I think it was about 70 miles offshore. And I actually went to bed because I didn't think the Israelis would attack. 60 women on board, 60 journalists, many elderly men on board, and it was. I couldn't conceive the Israelis attacking our ship, but they did. I guess they had a plan, and they followed through. And at 4:30 in the morning, they came in with Zodiacs and then helicopters dropping commandos onto the top of the ship, and in a nutshell, all hell broke loose. It turned into a free fire zone. Basically, anybody on the deck was possibly going to be shot. And that's why I stayed inside. I stayed inside the stairwell and simply documented the people being brought inside, the dead and the wounded, and the captured Israelis. I saw all three of the captured Israeli soldiers being brought in, how they were handled, and witnessed how they were taken down below and protected. Anyways, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well, maybe. How many people were killed aboard the ship? 9. 9 people were killed.
Nine people were killed, and there's one other fellow that was shot in the head who's in a permanent coma. They don't talk much about him, but he's still alive, but he's I'd say as good as dead. He's in Turkey. He was shot in the head. Of those 9, 5 of them were shot at close range. The forensics done by the Turkish autopsy people, they proved that through powder burns and whatnot, that 5 of the 9 dead were shot at like execution style is what they said, at very close range. I saw 2 of the people going through with with bullet holes in the sides of their heads. That when I saw them, I immediately thought those are execution shots. So nobody gets shot in the side of the head or back of the head by, not nobody, but when you see 2 of them, it was very suspicious to me that they were executing people on the deck. And the Turks verified that. their autopsy showed that 5 of the 9. Interestingly, a little sidebar, I saw one fellow with 2 bullet holes in the back of his head. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's, that they're executing people. And after the fact, I went through all the records, and I couldn't find one of the dead people with 2 holes in his head. And I thought maybe I had not seen things right, or maybe I was quite worried because I was reporting this to the media, and it turned out that fellow survived. His name's Hassan. I met him. He's in fine health. And he showed me he took 2 shots right in the back of his head, came right out the front of his face. And I thought he was dead when I saw him, but he survived.
And he's in fine health?
He seems he's okay. I met him before, and I had tea with him actually before the assault. One of the days I was there before, and I saw him when I went back to Turkey in over Christmas. I went back for the welcoming home celebration for the Mavi Marmara. They brought her out a refit. The Israelis destroyed everything on the ship, so they had to put her into refit, rebuild everything, the engines, the electronics, all the steering equipment. So I went back for the welcome home, and here was Hassan. And he showed me the holes in the back of his head. I'd say I shouldn't laugh about it, but it's just one of those funny things. I saw his body laying there, thinking there's somebody who's been executed who's dead, and they tried, but he survived.
So 9 dead, and I guess about many injured as well.
Many injured. I think it was I believe it was 31 seriously injured. And then I think another 20-odd wounded. So there's a total of 54 wounded.
How many people were aboard the ship?
650, I believe, something around 650.
Unarmed?
Oh, no, there was no arms. No weapons of any sort. Weapons. They made their own weapons, so to speak. They had broom handles, they had chains. Here's an example. When I went back into Mavi Marmara for Christmas, I toured the ship, and I came upon one of the chains that you'll actually see in the film of what they use to protect themselves. Well, I wouldn't lock my bicycle up with this chain, and yet these folks were using chains like this to try and fight off a helicopter gunship, fight off soldiers with machine guns. And that's why, when they're using broom handles and chains, that's why there's 9 dead and 54 wounded. And the Israelis suffered. The 3 soldiers that I saw, and I took photographs of them. They had bruises. They had contusion on their face and whatnot, and they were roughed up pretty bad. Not pretty bad. They were roughed up to the point that they could get the weapons off of them. And then after they brought them inside without their weapons, then they were taken care of. They were taken down for medical treatment. I watched them go down the stairs being carried and whatnot.
And they were later released, and then they were okay.
Yep, they were released. They had them. They held them in the lower deck 1, for their own safety. And then at the end of the assault, when the Israelis had seized the bridge, and the captain had ordered he had asked everybody to stop resisting, and they did. All the resistance stopped at the captain's request. And then they released the 3 commandos at the bow of the ship. And interestingly, they released them. One of the doctors that was escorting them to the bow got shot by another Israeli soldier up above. And 2 of the commandos immediately jumped right off the ship. They plunged into the water. Thankfully, they were saved. Otherwise, if they had drowned, it would have been a terrible thing. But I guess they were so terrified. I know they were terrified. I saw them coming on. They were absolutely... I'd never seen anybody so terrified in my life. I guess they were expecting to be dismembered probably, or be lynched or whatever. But the aid workers protected them. I watched one fellow try and hurt one of the soldiers, and the aid workers pushed this fellow aside and scolded him severely, and then they carried the soldier down the stairs to be given medical attention. And anyways, I'm bad at rambling, so what's maybe...
Well, it's an interesting ramble. So we're talking to Kevin Neish, who was aboard the Mavi Marmara in May 31st of last year, when the ship was attacked by Israeli commandos to stop it from reaching Gaza. Now, Kevin, like myself, probably a lot of people are not familiar with exactly what Gaza is and where Gaza is and why it has become such a flashpoint in the Middle East. Can you go into that?
Well, Gaza is part of Palestine. it's one of the two parts that were left over after 1948 when Israel was created. Palestine was broken up into basically three parts: the West Bank, Gaza, and then Israel. And Gaza borders Egypt. I believe it's 25 miles long and maybe I think it's 2.25 miles wide.
So Gaza is 25 miles long and 2.25 miles wide.
Yeah, it's like going from...
It's tiny, really.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like going from here to Nanaimo maybe and then 2.5 miles wide.
Well, not even from here to Duncan, really.
Yeah, I guess you're
miles.
right. I guess you're right. Yeah, no, it's a very, very small area. Yeah, it's amazing such a small area can be so contentious. And
how many people live there?
1.5 million.
So in that small area, it's like one big city almost.
Yeah. Without the services.
Yeah. It's poverty-stricken.
Yeah.
It's cut off.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get people or anything into or out of Gaza because the Egyptian, it's on the sea, it's bordered on the sea on one side, it's bordered on Israel, by Israel on the other side, and there's a small strip of it that also borders Egypt. The Egyptian border is basically closed, and the Israeli border is closed.
Closed, yeah.
And the water, they won't let anything in by ship either. So Gaza is cut off. Why? Why is it so important to Israel that Gaza be cut off? What does Israel want from Gaza?
Well, I'd say they wouldn't mind the land. It's just like they're slowly encroaching on the West Bank and taking over land, and they want the land, power and the land. In Gaza's case, it's such a small area that I would say what they're doing is they're punishing the Gazans for voting in Hamas. They voted in. They didn't vote in the Fatah party, and I'd say they're punishing for that. And they're making an example of them. All the other countries around, Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Lebanese, the Syrians. It's a message to all the other Arab countries around, all the other Arabs around them, that if you give us a hard time, if you're thinking of, if Syria is thinking of taking back the Golan Heights, which is being illegally occupied by Israel, well, here's what you're going to get. Look at Gaza, and I think that's what they're doing. It's called collective punishment. Some people in Gaza are trying to struggle and fight back. And it's a collective punishment against everybody in Gaza, which is illegal according to the Geneva Conventions. I mean, it's one of the few good things that came out of the Second World War is the Geneva Conventions, some rules about how you act in war, and the Israelis are breaking many of these. Well, I mean, attacking the Mavi Marmara was a classic example of breaking the Geneva Conventions. A humanitarian ship is not supposed to be assaulted that way. Humanitarian aid ships are supposed to be allowed into areas like Gaza.
So the one problem in Gaza is there's probably not enough food. There's not enough medical supplies. There's not enough equipment for building homes or houses or hospitals or schools or anything else.
Educating the population. Half of Gaza is under 18 years of age. So you can imagine half the population is school age.
And what's the population again?
1.5 or 1.25 million. I'm not quite sure about that, but many. And they don't have school supplies. And
all of these are blockaded.
You
can't get school supplies.
Yeah, before the Mavi Marmara and the flotilla was attacked, the Israelis had a list of 100 things that they would let in. So there was only 100 items that would be allowed in. School supplies wasn't there.
So everything else was not allowed
in. So you can imagine a supermarket must have thousands of items in it. Just any small supermarket, and the Gazans had a list of 100 items that were allowed in. So I could let them speak for themselves. A foreign minister at the time, when the blockade was first brought in 2007. I can't think of his name, but the Israeli foreign minister said that the Gazans were going to be put on a diet. So they're saying that to the public, they're saying in the media that this blockade is about weapons and stopping weapons from getting in, or stopping concrete from getting in, or cement from being used for making bunkers. But in real fact, it's about putting the Gazans on a diet. It's about punishing them. That's what it's about.
And they are being punished.
They are being.
People, I assume, are dying of disease and hunger.
I mean, one of the goals of the flotilla is not just to take. I mean, the aid that we're bringing in is minuscule. It's small. I mean, for that many people, it's symbolic. But the idea is to break the blockade.
And that's why the ships were sailing.
Yep, to break the blockade.
To break the blockade.
Trying to end the blockade. Not the aid's important. Certainly, anything we can do to get aid in is important. But the goal is to break the blockade, to break the illegal blockade.
And to publicize what's going on, because it's something that really in North America we don't hear much about, except when something like that happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had the weight of the Geneva Conventions, the law of the sea, the criminal court was all on our side to allow us in. The UN Security Council, and this was agreed to by I'm sure the United States agreed to this, otherwise it would have vetoed it. But after that last attack the Castellet attack, when Israel invaded Gaza in 2008, I believe it was, Security Council Resolution 1860, and it was allowed to go through by the Americans. They didn't veto it. It said that all humanitarian aid should be allowed into Gaza. So we had the strength of the Security Council backing us to go in there with our aid, but that didn't matter. It was the Israelis. And I was going to mention it was a two-way street here. We're trying to get aid in, but we're also going to be taking sick Palestinians out, because they can't get the treatment within Gaza. So any ships that did get in, some did get in. I think there's eight ships, 8 flotillas went in. Most of them were single ships. When they did get out again, I think 4 or 5 got in, they took injured and sick Palestinians out for treatment. So that's a very important, and students that needed scholarships. A student in Gaza might have a scholarship to an American university, and he can't get out. The Israelis won't let him get out to take in his...
How about along the Egyptian border then? If the Israelis won't let him out, Gaza does border Egypt as well. Will the Egyptians under, we all know now, Hosni Mubarak, would also not let...
They wouldn't know. It was all sealed up. The Israelis called the shot. The Egyptians worked with, I wouldn't say the Egyptians, the Hosni Mubarak and the military worked with Israelis. They had
and
the
Americans.
And the Americans, Israel gets, I think, $3 billion a year in aid. The second, and that's the largest amount of aid anybody in the world gets from the United States. The second largest recipient is Egypt. They get $1.5 million, mostly military.
$1.5 billion.
Billion, yeah, you're right. So they're being, I would say, they're being bought off, and they've got to play the game and do what the Americans or the Israelis, whichever way you want to put it, say. So no, the border was sealed up. After the assault on us, the border was opened up. They allowed sick and injured Palestinians to get out for medical care. Understood, internationalists could come and go fairly freely finally. So
I'm sorry,
internationalists. Well, like myself, internationalists, human rights observers were allowed to get in through Egypt finally. So it was there some good things came with this, and the list of 100 approved items. It got turned right around, and now there's a list of things that they don't allow in, and officially everything else is allowed in. But
so that's a major change, and it's for the better, for sure.
Yeah, on paper, it's. I'm hearing things aren't really getting in that much more, but on paper, the list has improved. There's many more things being allowed in, and people are able to get in and out. Right now, it's all sealed up because of the things happening in Egypt. The border is closed up, but we're certainly hopeful that once there's a democratically elected government in Egypt, I'm sure things are going to be much better with the border. If Israel doesn't seal up the border again, we'll wait and see. Anyways, I'm rambling again.
Who is the government now in Gaza? You mentioned Hamas. Are they the elected government?
Yep, they're elected government. Yeah, they were duly elected in, it would have been 2007.
And they still are the government.
They still are the government there, yep.
Now, it's interesting to note that Canada and the United States were both pushing for democratic elections in Gaza. But when the Gazans dared to elect the wrong people to represent them, then of course the tone changed very rapidly, especially from Canada and the United States.
Yeah, no,
and it was they don't want, and we don't want, our government said no, that kind of democracy. In fact, I think Canada immediately cut off some aid to Gaza after Hamas was
we were
elected.
the first country to cut off diplomatic and aid relations with the people of Gaza.
After they elected Hamas.
After they elected Hamas, yeah, and that was an election that was observed by the UN, the European Union, Jimmy Carter, his
So
group
the election
was
fair.
They all said the election was fair, and
Has Canada still? Are we still? Cutting
we're still taking that stand.
So when Mr. Harper talks about democracy and promoting democracy around the world, we should realize and we should understand that it's only the kind of democracy that he wants. If people dare to elect the wrong democratic government, then and I mean there is a war of sorts between Gaza and Israel. I mean it's not a war that Gaza is. It's like David versus Goliath.
Well, Gaza,
but there is at least an ongoing battle. And when you mentioned collective punishment earlier, it's because rockets are fired out of Gaza sometimes, and the Israelis come back and
respond, as they say in the media. Well, you have to go back to the origins of this. That it's occupied territory. After 1967, before 67, that was Gaza was free. Gaza was actually part of Egypt. It wasn't occupied by Israel. After 1967, Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza, and there's many UN resolutions ordering Israel to get out of Gaza, to get out of the West Bank. So they're breaking the law. They're breaking international law by being there, by imposing a blockade on Gaza.
But it's not occupied in the sense that Israeli troops are in Gaza, are there? I mean, I don't know.
No, they're I
guess they come and go when they.
Well, they can come and go where they please. Just the other day, actually about 4 days ago, I believe it was, the Israelis came in and rocketed a medical warehouse full of medical supplies. They flattened it to the ground. Who knows why? I've seen the video. Actually, a fellow from the ship, Ken O'Keefe, was there, and he walked through the warehouse as it was on fire, showing the medical supplies being burned and whatnot by the Israeli attack. I mean, it's maybe the soldiers aren't standing in downtown Gaza City, but they surround it. They control the airspace. They control everything going in and going out. It's occupied. It's actually worse than it used to be, because as an officially occupied area under Geneva Conventions, the occupier has to take care of, feed, guarantee things for the people that are occupied. Israel is trying to get out of that commitment. They're trying to somehow say they're not occupying it anymore, so they don't have to take care of anybody there. They don't have to worry about supplying anything to Gaza because they don't occupy it anymore. But the Gazans can't get anything. And that's the thing. The sea border of Gaza is a border to the world. It's a border with Canada. The sea border to the Mediterranean, that's a border for the whole world.
You mean if it was open, the whole world could get into Gaza?
Yeah, technically, there's the blockade's illegal, the occupation is illegal, so that border should be wide open for. I mean, Israel can blockade their side. That's their right. They can blockade their side of the border and keep Gazans from getting into Israel and put a big fence up. But they have no right to blockade the ocean border. That's a border with the world, and the Gazans should be able to come and go at their will and have Canadian ships or any ship going into Gaza with aid or take people out.
But they can't.
But they can't. Israel has an illegal blockade, so they've got it all sealed up, and that's what we're trying to help here by breaking that blockade.
Let me just ask, where did the people who now live in Gaza come from? Were they just people who were pushed out of what is now Israel and went into that little strip of land?
A large percentage of them are. From 1948, when Israel, I would say, ethnically cleansed a lot of Palestine. They pushed, so I think it's 750,000 people out of out of Israel. And they were pushed into the West Bank, into Lebanon, and a lot of them into Gaza. They pushed, hundreds of thousands of people into Gaza, and now
there they remain, and their children and grandchildren.
Yep, in UN-sponsored refugee camps. It's and they're still, they're still considered refugees. The UN still supplies medical treatment and food and whatnot to these people because they're still considered, and they're refugees. Their home is across the border in Israel, and Israel won't let them back. So that's their situation today.
There's a Canadian boat to Gaza that you mentioned before we started the interview. Maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. When I came back, I was on a tour of Canada, giving speaking tour about what happened to me on the Mavi Marmara, and I guess a number of organizations, Jews for a Just Peace, Jewish Voices, the Arab Federation of Canada, Canadian Palestinian Association, Postal Workers of Canada, CUPW, many other trade unions. Anyway, student groups, they all got together and decided that next time there'll be a Canadian ship on the flotilla. And I thought it was a pretty tall order to pull that off, but they've done it. They had a goal of raising $300,000. I believe they're at a $200,000 mark right now. And if people want to find out about that, they can go to our website, CanadaBoatGaza.org. CanadaBoatGaza.org.
Okay.
And they can there's a PayPal button there, and they can donate. And they're just in the final preparations for buying a ship right now. They're overseas. I won't say where, because I don't even know, because they have to keep it very secret, because the Israelis will put huge pressure on whatever country the ship is in there, and they'll try and sabotage it. There's talk that they sabotaged 3 ships in our last flotilla, my ship included. So
now, interestingly, in amongst the Canadian Boat to Gaza group, it sounded like there's some Jewish groups in there as well.
Certainly, yeah. No, there's a fellow in Vancouver is hoping on going, Jace Tanner, a Jewish Canadian fellow in Vancouver. He's hoping to go. No, there's been some of our strongest supporters, and I would say the bravest supporters that we've got are Jewish Canadians. Like I say, Jews for a Just Peace and
Independent Jewish Voices.
Independent Jewish Voices, another excellent organization. Back, I saw them in Toronto and Ottawa, and even in Montreal as well. So, no, very, very brave folks. They take a huge amount of. I take a lot of abuse. I've been violently assaulted on the street. I've had death threats and emails sent to me saying I should be whacked, and my family as well. My daughter suffered abuse by telephone and email, whatnot, from these goons. But that's one thing. But these Jewish people, they call them self-hating Jews. These folks are very brave. They're taking quite the risk in supporting this project. So I'm quite honored to be working with them.
When is the next flotilla, or the flotilla that this ship will be a part of? When is that going to happen?
Yeah, well, the Mavi Marmara is going again. It's at it's scheduled to leave end of May 31st.
Just a couple of months from now.
It's a few months from now. Yep, and the Canadian, there'll be a number of ships this time. Last time there were, let me think now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ships. There were supposed to be 8 ships, but the Mavi, 2 of them couldn't make it. My ship was broken down, and the Rachel Corrie, again, it broke down. Sabotage, we don't know. It missed the flotilla. But the Mavi Marmara has been rebuilt. It was completely trashed by the Israelis. The engines destroyed, all the bridge, everything was smashed out. But the Turks have rebuilt her. I saw her at Christmas. She's looking quite fine. They've left all the bullet holes, though, so I was able to walk around and actually see the bullet holes and the damage and the blood on the seats, and able to sit in the couches that I was sitting on and look at the blood that was all around my seating area. But yeah, she's going back, and there will be a Canadian ship going with her, and Italian, German, the Norwegians are going again, I understand, Swedes, the Greeks, Indonesians, the Australians, the Americans are sending a ship again. I understand there could be as many as 20 ships going. But again, no one's saying complete details because it's all under wraps. Like I say, I'm a main part of this organization, but even I don't know where the ships are that we're looking at or what countries they're in or anything, because they have to keep it hush-hush. But there's going to be a ship, I can tell you that much.
Nobody knows how that's going to end up. Hopefully better than this last.
I certainly hope so. I don't know what ship I'm going to be on.
Oh, you're going again?
Well, I'm going again, certainly. When I was in prison, the Turks were quite pleased with me. They certainly adopted me as a friend. The Israelis put guns to my head a half dozen times and threatened to kill me a few times because I stood up to them. If they were going to if they were threatening physical violence on some of the people around me, the Arabs and the Turks, I would stand up to them, and I didn't take a beating. They didn't lay a hand on me too hard. They roughed me up here and there. But the Turks in prison, they invited me to sail with them on the Mavi Marmara again, and in prison I said I would. So it looks like I'm going to be sailing with the Mavi Marmara. Again, it's not my call. It's up to the people that run the ship. And the Canadian ship, I'm either going to be on the Mavi or on the Canadian ship. We'll just see what's the best way to go, logistically speaking.
And it's worth noting that there is a peace possible in the Middle East. I mean, this can come to an end, and
well, that's the goal.
Yes.
That's the goal.
Let's just all hope and pray, if you want to, that happens sooner rather than later. Kevin, any last words?
Well, I think you had a good wrap up there, that the goal is peace. I mean, what we're hoping is that if the Gazans have freedom and democracy and can connect up with the rest of the world, then they won't be attacking Israel. They'll have no reason to attack Israel, and that's what the goal is. So, and if we have peace in Gaza, well, then hopefully it'll just flow from there. Look what's happening in Egypt. You know,
yes.
Who would have thought? Well, hopefully I'll be able to say the same thing about Gaza. Who would have thought? Peace in Gaza.
And peace, really, between Israel and its neighbors.
Yeah, and its neighbors, exactly. Yeah, I don't want anybody to get hurt on either side. That's the goal, is to stop all the fighting.
Okay. What you're going to be seeing now is film taken aboard the Mavi Marmara as it was attacked by Israeli commandos. This is the only film that was gotten off the ship. Everything else was destroyed. There were a lot of filmmakers and a lot of cameras aboard. Everything was destroyed except this one small piece of film. It was smuggled off. The producer of this was a woman by the name of Iara, and the film was shot by Stojiljkovic. And I'm sure that I'm pronouncing that name wrong, and I apologize for doing it. And we're going to be watching that film now with a narration by Kevin Neish.
My name is Kevin Neish from Victoria, BC, Canada. And I was on board the ship the Mavi Marmara as part of the Freedom Flotilla trying to take humanitarian aid to Gaza on May 31st, 2010. At 4:30 in the morning, we were attacked by Israeli commandos. This is a film of what happened. This is the only film to escape Israeli confiscation. Muslim prayer started at about 4:15 a.m. The Israelis can see this happening as they were in their warships. I don't think it was a coincidence that the Israelis started the attack in the middle of the prayers. Here the Israeli assault ships have arrived. There are 15 of them. The Imam has given special dispensation to allow some passengers to leave prayers early to defend the ship. Take note of who the passengers are, mainly older, retired, middle-aged men. Notice many are wearing life jackets. This is because they are committed to either get to Gaza or they fully expect the Israelis to sink the ship.
Görüşen geliyor.
Now, why would anyone on this ship want to provoke or take on the Israeli military, with numerous women and elderly men like this gentleman on board the Mavi Marmara? This is the first attack by the Israelis at 4:25 a.m., completely unprovoked and without warning, while we are still in international waters and actually steaming away from Gaza. Four Zodiacs attacked the stern of the ship with bullets, chemical weapons, tear gas, flash, and stun grenades. They are firing point blank at the aid workers who are trying to prevent them from illegally boarding the ship. They're using fire hoses, wooden poles to push the Israelis away. Almost simultaneous to this attack, an Israeli Black Hawk helicopter right now is trying to land a squad of commandos on the top of the ship on deck 5. Israeli snipers have by now shot 2 aid workers from that helicopter before any commandos landed. When the first Israeli commandos land, they were overwhelmed by aid workers and 3 commandos were disarmed and detained. The Israelis then cleared the top deck by shooting everyone from their helicopter, killing 4 and wounding 14. Some of the wounded aid workers escaped down this bloody ladder. We're now on deck 4. You can see the Israeli sniper's red laser sight on the deck looking for a target from the helicopter. This is the second assault by the Israeli commandos from the helicopters. There are no more aid workers resisting on the top deck, as the Israeli snipers have shot down all the aid workers there. The 3 captured Israeli commandos have been taken to deck 2 for medical treatment and detention. Numerous heavily armed commandos are dropping onto the top deck of the Mavi Marmara. The man in the dark shirt is Srdjan, a journalist who was shot while filming the commandos. Slingshots and marbles versus gunships. The aid workers used anything they had to try and repel the Israeli commando pirates. We're still on deck 4. The Israelis now control deck 5, the top deck. And they are now firing down at aid workers on deck 4. It's now a free fire zone. You can hear the gunfire in the background. Many dead and wounded are being dragged into the stairwell.
Tut tut tut. Tutsanıza ya. Tutun kardeşim tutun ya. Tamam dur abi. Aşağıya mı gidiyoruz arkadaşlar? Aşağıya gidiyoruz. Aşağıya mı indiriyoruz? Yol verin.
That's me in the black hat on the right. I will show an Israeli hit list of passengers from the flotilla, which I recovered from an Israeli commando's backpack.
All the members of Challenger 2 on the Israelis.
Each ship is listed separately. Challenger 1, the freighters,
On the other side, you got the whole thing.
passengers from the Mavi Marmara.
Thank you, Kevin. You have anything?
We're now looking at the Deck 3 lobby. An Indonesian doctor shot in the wrist.
Brothers, take some for this.
They're distributing onions to try to ward off the tear gas effects.
Give me the onion, give me the onion, give me the onion.
Onions from the galley.
Excuse me, my son, Indonesia.
This photo speaks for itself. This man coming down the stairs has been shot 3 times in the back. He dies in his wife's arms. Who would provoke an attack when your wife is on board? The Israelis.
Mais ils ont shooté, il a des trous dans le ventre, des corps, mais merde. Un pays en famille comme ça.
On the third deck at the stern, the prayers carried on. This aid worker picks up his weapon, so to speak, a length of aluminum pipe, and his firefighting mask, and returns to the resistance. We're now in the 4th deck stairway lobby. An Israeli commando with a machine gun is outside that door trying to shoot his way into the ship. Chains, broom handles, pocket knives, pipes against machine guns, and helicopter gunships. These aid workers are preparing to suicidally rush the commando if he gets inside. That man is hit, but he survives.
Evet, yukarıya takviye lazım arkadaşlar, yukarıya giriyorlar. Arkadaşlar buraya gelin ya, ama bakın böyle. La ilahe illallah. La ilahe illallah. La ilahe illallah.
Ayna tutuyor. Karşıya tutuyor. Lazarus.
Yukarıya takviye yap, yanıma gidin. La ilahe illallah.
Ya buraya da gel.
Ya durmayın, durmayın.
We're now going downstairs to the third deck lobby. More dead and wounded all around.
Acil doktor.
Tamam doktor buradan. Doktor. Doktor bey.
The man on deck is Sinjez Sungar, father of 7. Dies from a single shot to his neck.
Şurayı açmamız lazım.
Gel sete gel. Hangisini alacaksın? Tamam. Abiler tutun bu arkadaşlarla hemen. Hemen.
Aşağıya hadi.
Hemen. Herkes tutsun.
Çekil yol ver.
Tutun. Ya arkadaşlar sağlam tutun hadi. Hadi. Bismillah tut.
Alttan tut.
Bismillah. Kaldır.
They are taking him to the second deck where the main medical area is. We won't see this area in this film, but I walked through it, and it was a mass of bloody bodies.
Tutmamız lazım. Niye tutmuyorsun?
Abi sağ.
Tutun hadi.
Kimden al? Yes.
You'll note the doctor is using a piece of broken glass to assess the wound on this Indonesian aid worker.
Gel doktor bey Muhammed. Doktor Muhammed gel. Biraz. Doktor Muhammed.
The doctors had absolutely nothing to work with, completely unprepared for such a murderous assault. In the end, all they can do is put pressure on it.
Muhammed açtım. Oksijen var mı? Kimse başını vurmasın. Aç.
We're on the third deck. The captain is announcing that the bridge has been taken by the Israelis, and so we are not going to reach Gaza. As such, all resistance stops. But the gunfire carries on. Here is journalist Sevdet Kildajar, whom we saw earlier, now executed by the Israelis, shot between the eyes while filming the attack. One of the 15 assault boats continues to attack, with warships in the background. We're now in the press room. Over 60 journalists were on board. Here are doctors getting instructions. Note the helicopter gunship in the sky in the background.
All the passengers are sitting down. We have now done here. We are civilians taking care of injured people. Don't use violence. We need help for the people.
That's Free Gaza's Lubna Masara, begging the Israelis to stop shooting and to help the wounded. They gave no help for 3 hours, and so 3 wounded aid workers bled to death.
Use violence against the civilians. People are sitting here. We have many injured people. Please don't attack. We need immediate help.
Lazer var ya. No, don't go. Lazer var ya. Lazer.
A total of 9 aid workers were murdered and over 50 wounded. 5 of the dead aid workers were executed at close range.
We need help. Your people are okay. Don't use violence against civilians. We are civilians.
This was a war crime.
There have been at least 3 reports written about the events of that day. One by the Israeli government, one by the United Nations, one, did you say, by the Turkish government?
The Turkish government.
Maybe you can just say a few words about those reports.
They're diametrically opposed. You have the UN Human Rights Council report and the Turkish report saying that the Israelis committed war crimes and that they attacked an unarmed humanitarian aid ship in international waters, and it should go, and this crime should go to the World Criminal Court, is what they're saying. And then the Israeli report, I haven't read it yet, but I've certainly heard lots of reports about it, summaries and whatnot. They're saying that we opened fire somehow, we being the people on the ship, that we started it by resisting and by somehow attacking these Israeli soldiers who had machine guns on us. And but I mean, my 2 bits into all this. I mean, I was there. I saw it. The Turkish report and UN report, they're very similar, almost identical. And that's what happened. That's what I saw. Everything they say in those reports is what I saw with my own eyes. The Israeli report, it's something out of La La Land. And all I can say to that is I'm not surprised. And because, as I said, what happened on that ship was a war crime. In time of war, if an enemy soldier is wounded and laying on the deck of a ship wounded, and he's shot in the side of the head, execution style, that's a war crime. And anybody who would do such a thing would be a war criminal and tried accordingly. This happened to 5 people on that ship who were unarmed aid workers, civilians. So, I mean, it just makes it that much worse. So, I mean, the Israelis committed war crimes. What are they going to do? Admit the war crimes or bluff their way out of it? Well, they're going to bluff their way out of it. That's why their report is so diametrically opposed, complete opposite of the other reports, and complete opposite of anybody who witnessed anything on the ship. Because, like I say, they committed war crimes, and what are they going to do? Well, they have to lie to get out of it, and they are. So that's my take on the reports, and you can see the reports. If you go onto the web, you can see the UN Human Rights Council report by googling it with Mavi Marmara or the flotilla, and the same thing with the Turkish report. It just came out a while ago with no fanfare. The Israeli report came out with quite a bit of fanfare. The Torel report, they called it.
When you say fanfare, you mean coverage in the media?
Coverage in the media and whatnot, yes. And very shortly after, the Turks released their report, and nobody's heard about it. I'm sure nobody's seen this show right now.
This was a Turkish ship. That's why the Turkish report is essential. And it was mainly Turkish people that were killed aboard the ship. Yeah,
mainly Turkish people. Nine Turks were killed, and like I say, many of the 54 wounded were Turks as well. So.
And the spelling of the ship is Mavi Marmara, if you want to Google it. Mm-hmm. And once again, you have to be very careful believing what you see, read, or hear in the Canadian media about what's happening in the Middle East. You just cannot trust, unfortunately, the Canadian corporate media about the entire Middle East situation. It is so biased and so one-sided that it's dangerous, because the media gives us misinformation and disinformation about what's going on in a very important part of the world. And it's certainly very undemocratic and corrupt reporting on that issue.
Well, concerning the reporting, it's sometimes you could learn a lot by what they don't say.
Yes, and very often it's that.
What's interesting here is that this film that we've seen, there's an hour-long film involved in it. Half hour of it is the attack, and you can go to Google, YouTube, and just type in Mavi Marmara video. I'm sure eventually you'll find the Iara film, 1 hour long. So this is the only film that got off the ship, and it shows the dead bodies, the wounded. You hear the gunfire in the background. It's all there, but nobody in Canada's seen it because it wasn't in the media. Yeah. Well, why is such a singularly important film never covered? It says a lot.
It says a lot. And this is in no way a criticism of the people who are working in the media. This is strictly the ownership of the media. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're the ones who make the final decisions. Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you very much for watching. You have been watching Face to Face.